Welcome back to another week. This week I'm doing something a little bit more special. This is actually a really old, probably antique chest of drawers that was actually in my family growing up. I wouldn't classify it as a family heirloom. It was something that my dad picked up at like a garage sale or an estate sale when my sister and I were little, and he brought it home to be one of the pieces of furniture for our family. My sister has had this in storage for a very long time. I mean, years and years, and it's just a little bit rough around the edges. It definitely needs to be completely refinished, completely spruced up. There are multiple areas where the veneer is chipping, coming away, completely missing altogether. It's this beautiful oak veneer over everything. Some of it does have solid wood, but the top and the drawer fronts are a veneer over a solid wood core. Now this piece absolutely has age. There's no question about that. Behind each one of these keyholes is actually a working and functional lock. So I don't have the original key, but that's pretty easy to get nowadays. So I'll probably order some keys. That way they'll be functioning locks yet again. The inside of the drawer boxes are pretty rough. I know that they need a lot of work. I might even consider replacing all of the drawer bottoms. We'll just have to see as I go along. This is going to be a really special piece. It'll be fun to redo, and I hope you enjoy the process. Come along with me this week and let's see what we can achieve. All of these drawers were held together with dovetail joinery. It's just coming loose and is pretty wobbly. Honestly, I think that's gonna help me out because if I do wanna replace these drawer bottoms, I should be able to get it apart pretty easily, clean up all the messy stain that the previous person who stained this got kind of everywhere, and just make sure everything's nice and tight and firm again. It's pretty messy, it's pretty dirty in there. The speckling on the back is just stain that got spilled when somebody stained this piece, who knows when. And it's not mold, it's not dirt, it's not gonna wash away. And the backer board is still in pretty good condition, so I'm gonna leave it. Something that is not in great condition are these drawer stops. There are several that are missing, and you can see somebody just nailed a little piece of board here to try to stop the drawer. However, I am gonna address these. A lot of times, these metal drawer stops will actually gouge the bottom of drawers, and it's pretty common to see damage at the bottom of drawers when a dresser has these. So I don't know if I'll be able to remove them because they're actually hammered into this solid wood. But by at least replacing the drawer bottoms, I will get rid of any of that damage that was caused. I will be keeping these original wooden knobs. They are appropriate for this style of furniture, this decade that it was produced, and I think that they're cute and they really suit this style. I'm just gonna get them taken off, set to the side, and I will strip them when it comes time to strip the finish off. These metal stops are actually coming out a lot easier than I was expecting, which is good. They're just hammered in with this point. I'm going to remove them and replace them with wooden blocks. It's just way less damaging than these metal drawer stops. I can't tell you how many times I've seen these just absolutely destroy the bottom of a drawer. While I'm at it, I am also going to remove the old wooden drawer stops that somebody added. They're just kind of falling apart. They were not the highest quality of wood when somebody installed them initially, so I don't feel bad taking these off. Although it's stuck much better than I thought it would be. This bottom drawer is in pretty rough shape. There was a section that actually broke off at some point. Luckily, it was kept, but it goes right here. And since I'm planning on taking these drawer boxes apart anyway, I'm going to fully disassemble this and then glue this back up so that it's functional again and this drawer bottom doesn't just slide around. I do want to go ahead and take all the drawer boxes apart all at the same time so that I can cut new drawer box bottoms and glue everything together all at the same time. It's also so much easier to sand down and clean up the insides and outsides of drawer boxes when they're all disassembled. The only thing that I'm going to absolutely make sure to do is to keep all of the drawer box components together. I do not want to mix up any of the sides and backs and fronts between the drawer boxes. They all fit together the way they're supposed to, so they need to stay together. This dresser was filthy, and dirty is an understatement. Like I said before, it had just been sitting in storage unused for years and years and years and just really needed a very thorough cleaning. So I'm going to take a TSP alternative with a bucket of warm water and I will clean the inside and the outside of absolutely everything. I want to make sure I have the cleanest surface possible before I start sanding. The last thing I want to do is grind any of this dirt, grime, leftover oils, furniture polishes, any of that down into the wood grain. This can affect how the stain adheres to and soaks into the wood grain itself. So again, clean surface is always best before proceeding with any kind of sanding, painting, anything of that nature. Not to mention, it's just nice to work on a clean piece rather than something that has some dust bunnies. Now to address the veneer. There were several areas of veneer where the glue had just come loose and it needed to be re-glued down. This is pretty typical after decades and decades of use. It's pretty common to see some veneer starting to lift. I simply put a liberal amount of wood glue underneath that surface, cleaned it up so that I didn't have too much spilling out the edge, and then I clamped everything nice and tightly for a appropriate amount of time to make sure everything set up and that veneer is where it needs to be again. And now I'm going to address sanding the components of the drawers themselves. I really wanted to get them completely sanded clean so that I could work on cutting the drawer box bottoms and gluing everything back up so that it can sit overnight for that glue to fully cure so I have a nice strong drawer box again. This finish was pretty stubborn, and I do know that oak is a hardwood, so I did start with an 80 grit. I just went very, very carefully. After the 80 grit, I did go with a 120 just to smooth everything over again. I just needed something with enough grit, enough tooth to really chew through those messy drawer boxes and give me the cleanest possible outcome at the end, and I think it worked perfectly. I had some leftover 1/4-inch plywood from another project and had just enough to complete all the drawer bottoms. I used the original drawer bottom to measure out the dimensions that I need, and I simply ran my sheet of plywood through my table saw, cutting everything to the sizes that I need. This was such a simple switch out for this particular piece. Sometimes it's a lot more complicated to switch out a drawer bottom, but for this one, I got really lucky that everything came apart so nicely and then fit back together seamlessly. I do want to make sure to use a liberal amount of wood glue on all of those dovetail joints. They're pretty good at holding themselves tight together. However, they do loosen up with age, so that wood glue with some clamps just really ensures a nice tight fit so that wood glue can really work and do its job. With all the glue fully cured, the next day I can come in and start to address some of those missing chunks of veneer. For this particular drawer, I want to create a nice straight line. So I am using a board as a guide that I will just clamp to the bottom. I am going to be using a Bondo style filler for this. It's just very strong, very durable, and dries pretty quickly. I will mix the two parts together and apply this in all the areas that the veneer is missing. This particular filler sets up really, really fast, and I find that I can sand it within 20-30 minutes. Now you will notice that this is a pretty unnatural color. It does not stain particularly well. It will change color a little bit with a stain, but what I plan on doing is doing some color correcting with actual color correcting paints later on. So I'm not too concerned about this off-white, slightly blue tint, even though I am planning on keeping this piece a stained wood grain. It's time to go in with my orbital sander and really start to clean up that old stain. I'm going to remove all of that old product as well as the top coat, really get everything down to the raw wood again. Anywhere that my orbital sander will fit, that's where I will use it. I do have a detail sander. It's just not quite as robust of a sander as my orbital sander. I find that this one really eats through the finish a lot faster, so it's a little bit more of a time save. Now, I could have used a chemical stripper on this piece, but I knew that I had to sand all of those drawer boxes back anyway, so I just opted to go ahead and sand the body of the dresser as well, instead of getting out the stinky chemical stripper, but I could have done either way. Just like those drawer boxes, I did start out with an 80 grit sandpaper and then backed it back down to a 120 grit sandpaper. I found that this worked really well. My detail sander works perfect for corners and tight spaces. It really gets in all those grooves, but even this cannot get rid of 100% of the finish, so I still had quite a bit of hand sanding to do. Pretty much where any seam met, I had to hand sand. And this is pretty typical. It's just part of the process, and in order to achieve a really flawless look, plan on doing some hand sanding, even though it's tedious. One of the metal feet was missing on one of these legs, but even if I had all four, I would most likely replace them. I'm not a huge fan of the metal feet that a lot of the old pieces had, just because they tend to scratch floors, especially if there's any sort of imperfection on them. So 9 times out of 10, I will usually replace them with a nylon glide, which just protects the floor as well as the furniture itself. Now that I have this piece completely sanded down, I do want to go in with a really, really dark stain. So I did pick Jacobean. This is a very, very dark, rich brown, and I really want to highlight the really pretty oak texture on this piece and bring it back to life and give it a look that's very cohesive with the decade and time frame that this piece would have initially been built for. I almost forgot about all of these old knobs. I think what I'm going to try to do is actually soak them in a bath of acetone for a little bit, see if that will loosen up some of the old finish. I'll buff it with a fine grit steel wool, but this will just be easier than having to try to sand these curved knobs down. We'll see how this goes. Now that these have been soaking for a little while, I'm gonna go in with my steel wool and just really give them a good buff. I don't know if this acetone really got rid of all of it. It looks like there's quite a bit of stain and finish clinging behind, but hopefully it loosened up enough to get me started. And I'll just take a sandpaper to the rest of it before staining these. It's the following day and that oil-based stain is now dry enough to be able to top coat this. I am going to go with my Tried and True water-based satin polyurethane. I will spray this product. So I'm going to put my spray gun together and filter it into the container and spray it on the piece. I will do at least 3 coats, letting it fully dry in between and doing a very, very light sanding with a high grit sandpaper. I do actually want to spray this top coat on the inside of the drawers as well. Since I took them completely apart, sanded them down, there's no protection on the inside. And even though I'm planning on lining the drawer bottoms, I want to add a little bit of extra protection and wipeability to these drawer boxes for the future. Now that that first coat of top coat is completely dry, I am going to take some color correcting paint. This is specifically for correcting damaged areas in wood grain. And there are multiple areas of this veneer that did get damaged and repaired. So I do want to take these color correcting paints and just blend out those areas and try to make them look as natural as possible. In my experience, the easiest way to do this is after the first coat of top coat so that if you make any mistakes, you can wipe it back. Plus, that really brings out that true color of the finished product so that you can more easily pick the correct color of paint that you need to go with. I will do this layer by layer and make sure that I'm building up the colors that are integrated in the very specific wood grain that I am picking. And then the very final step, once that's all dry, I can go in with a very dark brown and create kind of the faux wood grain that you see in heavily grained pieces like oak. Once I'm happy with my color correcting and blending, I will give the body of the dresser one more light sand and then seal everything off with that last coat of top coat. This will just ensure that that color corrected area has all the durability that it needs to stay put and stay blended into the rest of the wood grain. Even though I have nice new drawer bottoms, I still want to protect them, plus add that fun little pop of pattern that is so interesting to look at once you open a drawer. This is just a peel and stick wallpaper. I just picked a pattern that I liked and thought was appropriate for this piece. It is something that's completely removable down the line, so if I ever want to swap it out later or if it gets damaged, it's easy enough to remove and I still have my clean drawer bottom underneath. Moving over to my miter saw, I am going to chop up some small stop blocks for those drawers out of a scrap piece of wood. I just want little blocks that I can glue on the inside of the back corner of the cavity of the dresser itself. That will ensure that those drawers come to a full stop where they are supposed to go. Something else that really helps out is tacking on little drawer tacks so that the drawers don't just rub the wood on wood. So this is where I was really truly debating about ending. I staged up this dresser and it looks really beautiful this way. There was just something that I wasn't totally happy with. I really set out wanting a deep brown, almost a chocolatey color for this entire piece. I still wanted that pretty oak grain to be able to shine through, but this was just looking a little more orange than I liked. So I went back in with my water-based top coat and I picked the deepest, darkest brown that I had in my collection. This color is nearly black. And I just put a little tiny bit inside my water-based top coat, made sure it was mixed very thoroughly, and I'm planning on using it like a toner. So after rubbing down the entire surface of the dresser, I'm going to spray light, even coats across the entire body of this and really build up that color that I want in a slow way, using the coats to build up the color rather than the thickness of the toned top coat itself. I initially sprayed on the first 2 coats with the drawers in and those knobs on so that I got color on the knobs. And you can really see the color starts to build up with those subsequent coats. For that last coat, I did go ahead and take the knobs off and sprayed the drawers flush down. Now let's take a look back at what this piece looked like before you can see that final toned chocolatey brown piece. This dresser had a lot of age, it had a lot of repairs that had been done before, and needed a little bit of love and TLC. But the wait's over. Let's take a look at that chocolatey brown dresser. This piece is absolutely lovely. It's exactly what I envisioned for this dresser. I really wanted to take it away from that dated orange tone and really showcase that beautiful oak grain and embrace the age that this piece had. This dresser has a story to tell. I think just visually looking at it, you know that it has age, it has character, and I know it has family history, at least for me. I am planning on keeping this dresser and showcasing it in my home for myself and my family. And who knows, maybe one day I'll pass it along to a niece or nephew and continue the family tradition. Let me know what you think. Do you like this chocolatey brown color, or would you have stopped after the first round of top coat? Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to check out my other videos. Thank you.